Hello and welcome to another exciting presentation here in Perugia of learning what's possible with smartphones and other small cameras telling big stories, some of the biggest stories that we are challenged with today. I am joined by two excellent colleagues who are not only excellent small camera filmmakers, but are profoundly talented teachers as well. I have from Montreal, Canada, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Salas. Yes, she's here. And I've got Robb Layton, who came all the way from Australia. We just presented in Las Vegas, so we zoomed here. And yes, I am a real cowboy, but I live in Berlin. Enough about us, you can figure it all out later. What we want to share with you is that that's not actually how we make movies with our smartphones. Okay. You can, and it's great if you're doing other things with smartphones with actors and, production helpers and Sherpas to carry that stuff around. But this is more like what it's like for us in the field, okay? That's how I do cinema, mobile journalism with an anamorphic lens, just as if it were a Panavision, and I'm George Lucas. That's where Indiana Jones was filmed. That's Wadi Rum. I was there 4 weeks ago. So that is my requirement, is that I want to get that feeling, that beautiful, something that AI will never do is be you in the field, coming back with, beautiful images that are shot with lenses you never thought you would shoot with. This is a distortion lens, otherwise known as an anamorphic lens, and it allows you to capture more image content from the sides of what you're pointing at, and it squeezes it into the sensor. And then when you de-squeeze it, that's when you get something that looks like film. And that means you can do that at the site of an exploding volcano that takes 2.5 hours to hike to and back because it fits in your backpack. You combine that with some apps that unlock this superpowers, and you can be a solo cinema mobile journalist. I'm just going to set the stage here real quick that yes, you can, and yes, you can win film prizes doing this, and yes, you can even edit it on your phone. This film was edited on the phone moments after filming. And you can follow this rabbit hole as far as you want. You can make the big camera setups like I showed in the first slide. You can add your own multi-track field recorder that runs on batteries, and you can have independent mics on everybody, and you can sync it all up with a free app that runs on your phone from Blackmagic that will sync the time code. So as much or as little as you want to explore this area, it is a wonderful intersection to learn filmmaking as a journalist. And you don't need to carry around a lot of stuff. This is what I try to do, is get everything into these small bags so that I can go out to stories that are far from my home, because that's just not going to happen with that camera. So let's do that. I'm going to switch over now to your presentation. Is that right, Rob?
Fantastic.
Okay, so we're going to do a little musical chairs here. Bear with us as I slip out of this. Oh, I have one little housekeeping. I run something called the Mobile Journalism Awards. Has anyone heard of the Mobile Journalism Awards? Yes, and how do you know about the Mobile Journalism Awards, Rob?
You told me about it.
I invited Rob a few years ago to help me get it started. But last year he sent in a movie, and he won Best Documentary. Yes. So you're here for that.
Thank you very much.
Never thought we would actually meet face to face because he's in Australia. So well, now you get your acceptance speech. There you go. All right. That's how Mojo rolls, people. Okay. Sorry, don't have any red carpet.
Okay, thank you, Rob, and thank you for the award. That's fantastic. That really made my day. It was very unexpected. So yes, my name's Rob, and I am from Australia. Any Aussies in the room? There's usually one. Oh, there's two. Well done. Oh, one of them's my wife. Well, of course. Thank you. So I've been teaching and practicing and researching mobile journalism for about 7-8 years now. But I'm actually a print journalist. I've been in newspapers for almost 30 years, but I always wanted to make films. This was my enabler. When I discovered that you could make films with a mobile phone, I was all in, and really all in. So it has opened up a new career path for me as a journalist and as a journalism educator, so I'm teaching my students how to do this now as well. But I thought I might just start by showing you a few things that I shot last year on my iPhone. That one right there. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a snapshot of my filmic life last year. I had quite a busy year. But the thing is that it's so versatile that mobile enables me to go places that maybe I would not normally be able to go. Everything packs down. I've got my kit here. I can travel quite easily, 30 foot up a mast of a tall ship or a light aircraft in over Africa. It really enables me to do a lot more that I would maybe not always expect to do. So what I've got here on the slide are the extremes. Now, Rob rightly said that maybe we don't have to have all the kit and the big lenses, but the point is, if you want to have the kit with the big lenses, you can. Or you can have a really minimalist kit like mine, minimal kit here, or my cinema kit there. And this is the beauty of it, that it really is about adapting to your needs and your workflows and what you want to do with mobile. This is one of the great attractions for me. So the last couple of years, part of my PhD project is to create a documentary, and I'm exploring the space of making it look more cinematic. How can we make our footage look more cinematic, shot with an iPhone? And that's the space that I'm exploring at the moment. But I guess, what does that mean? I mean, everyone bandies that word cinematic around, but what do you think of when I say that word cinematic? What's the first thing that comes into your mind? Quality. What was that? Quality, absolutely. Anything else? Cinema, that's right. And that's really what it is. It's characteristics, techniques that you would expect to see in a film shown in a cinema. And that's what I've been aspiring to do. I started this when I was in Scotland a few years ago, shooting a short documentary up there. And I've since been exploring that and moving that more into a mobile space. So it is something that maybe is not for run and gun type journalism, which is one of the great attributes of mobile, but it's something that maybe takes a little bit more consideration, maybe a bit of an artistic approach, and certainly emerging and advancing mobile technologies. And this is a space that's really dynamic, and we have so much new tools at our disposal. So I thought I might share with you my top 10 tips that you can use to perhaps make your mobile films a little bit more cinematic, for want of a better word. My number one clearly has to start with light. This is the foundation of all photography. So you need to really study light and understand what it's doing. And the advice I give to my students when we do exercises is, don't photograph or film the thing that you're looking at. Film the light interacting with the thing that you're looking at. That's really the core message, is to see how that light wraps around or how it's reflecting off an object. Film the light. That's the most important thing. Once you've understood light a little bit, then you can harness it, and that's called exposure. So most phones, most cameras will always look for that middle grey, that medium exposure. But we may not always want everything to look like the middle of the day. So the biggest takeaway would be to just tap, hold, and lock your screen, and then you can run your finger up and down with most phones, certainly iPhone, to make it brighter or darker, and let the darkness fall to black. There's no problem with that. Colour is a very important aspect of cinematic experiences. Now, you can devise a colour palette in the filming. Now, it's a little bit different, a bit difficult with documentary making because you never really know what you're going to be filming, perhaps. But something like this, when I was filming on sky, those muted earthy tones and the grey of the sky was my palette. But then you can really enhance that later on in post, and I'll talk about that in a moment as well. Location is important. Now, thinking about the location differently. Now, I know that if you're in your backyard, in your city, your suburb, you see the same old every time, and it's a challenge to try and represent that in a different way. So maybe challenge yourself to think a little bit differently. Think about seeing the familiar in a different aspect. Now, I live in a very beautiful place in Australia. We've got beautiful beaches, and even every day when I go down to the beach, I think, how can I show this differently? So it's a challenge, even in a beautiful location, but there is always beauty in the mundane. Framing and composition. Now, these are two different things. Framing is, which camera do you want to use? I've got 3 on this phone. Do I want to use the ultra wide? Do I want to use the medium, or do I want the tele? Each of those will be a different narrative. Then, do I need to put my camera closer, further away, higher? That's the framing. Once you have the framing, then think about the composition. And with composition, turn on the grid. Every smartphone has that capacity to turn on the grid, and when you put the grid on, you can utilize the rule of thirds, putting things on intersections or spatial divisions. Aspect ratio, you would have seen my film from the boat, that tall ship I was on. It was quite letterboxed. Now, this is a very cinematic feel of that letterbox. Now, that was shot with an anamorphic. What I'm showing you here is an anamorphic lens that Rob explained. It distorts the image, so it's got to be de-squeezed. It may not be for every situation, but in certain situations, particularly if you've got big landscapes, it works very nicely. Think CinemaScope. If you've seen the Dune movie just recently, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. The next one is bokeh. This is probably the most defining characteristic of cinema. Bokeh is that aesthetic blur that you'll get with a very shallow depth of field, which traditional cameras excel at. Now, smartphones have always been very difficult in achieving this because of, well, limitations of hardware. So they overcome that with computation to make things blurred. So we want a blur in the background or the foreground to give emphasis onto our subject. Now, this has been really ramping ahead in the last few years. There's a lot of advances in iPhones and other. I saw the news, Xiaomi has an aperture that gives limited depth of field. We can achieve this with synthetic bokeh, and this is what cinematic mode is all about. And this is getting better all the time. It's worth noting that this technology is the worst it will ever be. Right now, this is the worst it will be. What's it going to be next year? Last year was good. This year is better. Next year, it's going to ramp up. And be able to isolate things. This is just some friends of mine throwing a bit of clay. Being able to isolate things for a narrative is really what it's about. So we can emphasize a story. And the beauty of this type, when it's algorithmic, we can change the focal points in post, which you can't do with the traditional cameras. We can go back after I've filmed and say, actually, I want this to be in focus and that to be in blurred, or vice versa, and you can change this up. That's really empowering. Now, we can use this also in everyday journalism. Now, I got this through one of my colleagues at the BBC. I'm sorry, I can't remember this journalist's name, but you can see how he's used cinematic mode in this interview, so the background is a little bit blurred. This is a nice application for just everyday packages. But what happens if you don't have cinematic mode? Well, you can still use this technique to make it look like it has cinematic mode, and that's to build depth into your imaging through composition and framing. Having something in the foreground, middle ground, and background will automatically give the impression of depth. Now, if you move that into your, with your interview subjects, same thing. Place your interview subject in an area of light with a bit of a dark background, ideally with a splash of light down at the end, and this will create depth in the scene. Now, number 8 is definitely use a third-party app. Use something that will enable you to completely control your exposures and white balance. And this app I'm showing you is a Blackmagic camera app. This is, for my mind, the best app on the market at the moment. It's completely free. You can download this right now if you have an iPhone. If you have an Android, you're going to have to wait probably a few more weeks because they're about to release it for Android. Now, it is a learning curve. You need to understand the relationship between frame rates and shutter speed and so on to get the most out of it. YouTube's a wonderful place for this. This is how I learned. Also, think about using your phone for recording natural sound. When I was on the boat around Iceland, we sailed 1,000 kilometres around Iceland, and I recorded natural sound using my phone and that microphone. Now, what you're hearing here is the built-in mic on the iPhone. I do a lot of diving, and this is the whales who are going past. So that's pretty good, but you really need to take it to the next level and get a dedicated app and microphones to go with it. This is a very good app for recording any sort of sound, interviews, natural sound, whatever you want. This is by Rode, another great Aussie company, as Blackmagic is. This is Rode Reporter app. Now, it's also completely free and it's high quality. Rode are audio specialists, they know what they're talking about. You can download this now as well and start recording. You need some microphones to go with it. This is what I use and what I would recommend. The main one, the Rode Video Mic NTG, is what is on my rig right there. That's my everyday mic. And something like the Wireless Go Wireless Pros, so you can clip on lapels and feed it into your smartphone. The last stage, of course, then is the edit. So having the ability to not just edit your packages, but color manage them. Now, I use DaVinci Resolve, which is made for color management, and it's on my iPad right here, and this is my speed editor that I use for my editing. DaVinci is free, that has a free version for iPad. It's very good. I did a half-hour documentary just with these devices. I did some, because we have 27 hours on a plane from Australia to here, so I had plenty of time to do editing on the plane using that, which is my mobile edit suite. This is what I've got in my office. I have it connected to an external external monitor here, which I can unplug and then just use my iPad and my speed editor to do on the road editing. All packs down into my one backpack. So all of my microphones, my phones, my rigs, my edit suite in one kit, and I can do this anywhere in the world. So that's me. If you want to connect with me, please scan that QR code. That will give you all my details. Send me an email, connect on social. I'm happy to connect and help you if you have any more questions. And outside after this session, I'm happy to have a chat as well.
Thank you, Rob. And I just want to say Rob is a real pro. I gave him 15 minutes. 15 minutes on the nose.
Thank you.
We're going to do a little housekeeping here and a little quick switch. I just wanted to say the other thing that you can do with your machine is go into, and you can actually compose your own music on your machines as well. Where do we find the HDMI? Here? Okay. But that's another topic for another day. Oh, ow. Okay. This is the other way.
If you want to make, well, Rob's doing that. If you want to make AI music, look up Google and what's it called? Google has a new tool that they've released. I think it's Music Lab or Music Effects. I can't quite remember it, but if you Google Music Lab or Music Effects, you can make your own AI music. It's actually very good. We use this with students for copyright-free music. It's a bit mechanical, but...
Thank you.
Google Music Lab from memory. I'll have to find the URL.
While we're waiting, I just want to say, if you've got questions in mind, we have programmed like 10 minutes, if we can get this going, for questions. So there will be mics, and we'll need you to use them because this is going on video. Okay, so I have a backup of your presentation.
Yeah, do you want my...
We're going to give it one more minute. Otherwise, I do have a backup on my iPad. Oh, that looked like it.
Want to try it from here?
It looks big there, so far. You see how cool and calm and collected we are? Inside, we're all like shuddering. That's television. Video production is full of all kinds of little glitches. Don't let it get you down. If you don't have a tripod, you can make one. This is a little MacGyver. So Mojo is fun because it brings out the MacGyver in you. This is a Manfrotto lighting clamp I pulled down from my studio lights. So, you know, don't give up. Looks like you're going to be
I think we're in business.
soon.
What's the name? Labs.google.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay, so could I just have the presenter view? Presenter view? Yeah. It's 2 little seconds. That's a gorgeous shot, isn't it? I'll be talking, yes, that was taken by one of my students, in fact, Karya Quash, on our last trip to the Arctic. Excellent. You can just do performance view. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Oh, it's gone from there. Oh, no, now it's okay. Great. Good afternoon. My name is Aphrodite Salas. I'm a mobile journalist and associate professor of journalism at Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. So my last 2 mobile journalism projects, documentaries and multimedia projects, focus on the story of an incredible Inuit community in the Arctic region of Canada. So in a nutshell, the people of Inukjuak came together and built a unique hydro project so that they could stop relying on dirty diesel energy. Overnight, they went from using 100% diesel fuel to heat and power their buildings to using 100% renewable hydropower. So the story of how this community rose up and continues to do so is nothing short of extraordinary. So really my definition of a big story. But they're in the Arctic, and it is an unforgiving place in terms of climate particularly. Most of the people there speak Inuktitut, not necessarily English. So how on earth did I go about building relationships and organizing reporting trips to this part of the world, and how did I do it using Mojo? So that's what I'm here to speak with you and share with you today. I'll be sharing a QR code at the end of the presentation. So when it came to Inukjuak, that's the name of the village, the logistics were daunting. So this community has only around 1,800 people who live there year-round. It's about 2,000 kilometers north of New York City, so 6 hours north on a plane. Incidentally, this is the community where the famous first documentary, Nanook of the North, was filmed. And the community had a lot of trauma in the past. So you may have heard about the residential schools in Canada. Their children were sent to residential schools. There was also government-sanctioned killing of their sled dogs from the 1950s to the 1970s. And there was also a forced relocation of some families to the high Arctic, again by the government of Canada in the 50s. So the Inuit are nomadic, and being in a settlement was just not natural. And the Canadian government created many of these settlements, and when they killed all their sled dogs, they were pretty much forced to stay put. So for heat and power, this is all related, they started getting these yearly shipments of diesel that is dirty, dangerous, and community leaders wanted to find another way. So that's where I started speaking with them at that point in about 2019. And they were in the process of building the first hydroelectric run-of-river power project in the Arctic, in the Canadian Arctic. So I'll talk about the process of relationship building, but first I'm going to cover logistics of using Mojo in the field in the Arctic with students. So in terms of lodging, logistical preparation, there's not a lot of infrastructure to support outsiders in these places for very long. So there are no restaurants, no rental car agencies, no hotels. We stayed in a co-op with rooms and a kitchenette and hired a local driver. In terms of food, there are 2 stores in this particular village, but things are very expensive, and often there's a lack of items, especially a lack of fresh fruit or vegetables. And keep in mind, the only way that they can get any big deliveries is on these ships, and so the ships only come a few times a year when the water is thawed, right? So it's extremely complicated. And on this slide, you can see a shot of the store. On the right, a shot of an empty freezer, and in the middle, I just highlighted how much it cost for a few slices of pizza and a bag of M&Ms and a bag of pistachios. It was $77, if you can't see. So we shopped for things like milk and bread, but we brought a lot of our own food as well from the south, which our hosts suggested, things that would be easy to make and eat, protein bars, soup mixes, cereals. But what else would we need to bring, right? If you said Mojo gear, you are correct. So what did I bring with me to the Arctic? For this project, we took the following. 3 phones, an iPhone 12 Pro Max, this iPhone XS, in fact, a Google Pixel phone, phone cage, tripods, monopod, a GoPro Plus car suction mount, and a Joby stick. So this is like super basic, right? Honestly, all of this fit into one big backpack. XLR mics, lav mics, wireless mics, several battery packs, a Canon S5D with all lenses and flash, SD cards, external hard drives, and many chargers, which goes into the next point, challenges of Arctic Mojo. So logistical issues of shooting in the extreme cold. Here's a photo of one of the Arctic sled dogs, so that I took on this phone, eating a piece of seal meat. I love that photo. So the tips, all the obvious things: make sure your lens is clean, you have a lot of storage on the phone, turn on airplane mode. We know this one. Now it's probably not an issue depending where you are in the Arctic because there's likely no cell coverage, but whatever, I'm always in that habit. The number one challenge of shooting in this kind of an environment is battery life. So already shooting video eats up the battery. The cold is a killer. So set out with fully charged phones, lots of battery packs, and car chargers. So when we were shooting those dogs, the Kimmet, it was so cold. That day, 100-kilometer-hour winds, it was really probably the coldest I've ever been in my life, which says a lot because I live in Canada. Our driver kept the truck running very close by to allow for us to shoot for a few minutes at a time, get back in the truck, warm up, and recharge any phones or batteries as needed. You can also store extra batteries or battery packs close to your body in an internal pocket on your coat where the extra warmth will preserve power. And just be sure to pack double or triple the batteries that you usually use. Thin thermal gloves that can go under your main gloves, which are ideally waterproof, portable hand warmers that you can put into the palm of your hands. Some people say, one other thing. One of the issues with protecting your hands in this way is it's hard to manipulate touch screens, right? You need some warmth in that finger to actually make the screen work. And if the warmth goes pretty quick. So you just need to make sure that you keep your hands warm and agile, which is not easy. You can consider a pair of climbing gloves, which let your fingertips peek out, but after 30 seconds, those are useless too. And wind is a problem. So be sure to keep a tripod or a monopod and use it religiously because in these temperatures, it's very natural for your body to shake uncontrollably, which will also ruin your shot. Benefits, obviously we know, Mojo, using a smartphone, it's agile, it's mobile, setup is minimal, teardown is minimal. But one thing that I find kind of what I love about using a smartphone for shooting is the fact that it can facilitate an immediate sense of familiarity and intimacy. It just allows for an immediate kind of, without setting up big camera equipment, you just get right into it. And an example I'd like to share is an interview with Elder Simeone Nalukturuk. It was his last day in office, the day that we were there in Inukjuak. He was the mayor, and when we arrived, he invited us to sit down, and it barely took 5 minutes to set up 2 iPhones. He began to speak. It wasn't really an interview. He had things on his mind. And I believe the unobtrusiveness of the phones really contributed to the intimacy of the moment. And this would end up being one of the last interviews he gave because he passed away about 5 months after that day. So instead of integrating the clips into the larger climate documentary we were working on, we decided it would be more appropriate to lightly edit the interview and create a separate documentary. Which we did in consultation with his wife, Alicina Lukturuk, and you'll be able to find it when I share the QR code at the end. So this experience really drove home the point that oral storytelling as a mode of transferring knowledge is deeply fundamental to Indigenous communities, and listening is a core principle. And listening can be so much easier with Mojo, where you can almost forget about the camera. For me, this kind of work, why do these things that are so logistically complicated? It can be fraught with emotion and just so many moving parts. For me, this kind of work is grounded in the crisis of trust between journalists and not only Indigenous people, but other marginalized and underreported communities. So that really crystallized in my mind almost 10 years ago in 2015. And what happened in 2015? Well, in Canada, that's when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission issued its final report. And that report focused on the systemic racism, abuse, and marginalization of Indigenous people in Canada. And there's a whole section on journalists and the media and how there's been a real failure of journalism organizations to consistently produce in-depth contextual stories on Indigenous issues. And that's where I really focused a lot of my work. Okay, yep. And if there's something that you do take from, excuse me, this presentation, it's the idea that, thank you. thank you, that Mojo can really contribute to storytelling that is less extractive and more collaborative. And these are some of the key concepts that I would like you to keep in mind if there is a takeaway. I'll just play 1 minute of the beginning of the climate documentary so you can have an idea of what we shot.
Illuatini. Kisiani uksualuk salumay litiriyok anir ni sarmi, sirmimik imarmilo. Taman na nukahulak tavut, taman na lo asi itulang alaksugu.
So please do feel free to take down the QR code, and I'll be traveling back to Inukjuak this September for part 2. As well, that work will be part of a substantial research grant that I've received through Voltage. Thank you. I'll be traveling back to Inukjuak this September for part 2. And as well, just anybody who's interested, I'll be continuing this kind of research through Voltage. It's a $123 million research grant at Concordia University to continue developing these kinds of projects on a larger scale. So the work will be ongoing for the next 7 to 8 years, and I do envision expansion to include international partners. So if you're interested, please do reach out to me. I'd be happy to speak more. Thank
Alex,
you.
I'm going to switch the video back, so be prepared in 3. That's a tight little plug there. They make things called video switchers. I just want to say that. It doesn't have to be like this. Okay, I'm up. We should be switching video here. I'm going to try it one more time. I just wanted to say after this... Doesn't work? Oh. Okay. Now it's coming. Ukraine. After this presentation last year, I was invited to Ukraine to train journalists. So for 2 weeks, I spent in Odessa and Ivano-Frankivsk teaching them the language of filmmaking. They were all newspaper reporters, and they were all internally displaced persons. That means they don't live where they did before the war. Of all the tech, this is the most important, to know the language of how to take your best shots, your best quotes from your interviews, your best facts, and turn them into a compelling narrative. Okay, at the end of the day, the most powerful technology is a workflow that requires no batteries. Okay, so it's really fun to play with all the toys and talk about the tech, but at the end of the day, you've got to be able to communicate what you've seen in a very profound way. And documentary film is one of those game-changing things. So that's why we have a film competition for that work and to celebrate the work that Robb's being honored for. And it's called the Mobile Journalism Awards. Guess who's one of the judges? It's been the most amazing talent recruitment tool I've ever created. So I'm really proud to share with you some more stories from Ukraine in the Crisis Reporting Division. we are short on time, and I'm going to get right to it. This is a 10-minute documentary. We're going to watch a little bit of it. It's basically a video obituary. Yeah, it's back.
Across the first bridge in Irpin, we're going to film other refugees leaving, and we got into a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed a checkpoint, and they start shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's two of us. My friend is Brent Renault, and he's been shot and left behind.
And how is he?
I don't know.
Зайшов обстріл преси, Брент Ентоні, загинув від ворожої кулі попаданням в голову. Куля вийшла через око.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there. We're going to go with some microphones. If you want to know more about the Mojo Awards, that's great. It's on Film Freeway. It's at Visual Editors, which is a nonprofit I founded 20 years ago for visual journalism education. This is season 5, and it is pretty prestigious. So if you're interested in what we're doing, if your students are interested, let them know about it. Help us spread the word. It's amazing. Thank you very much. I'll skip through to the end, and there's my QR code if you want to know more. Okay? Questions, please. There's a microphone, please. Get to the hands, right, one right here, and right in the front row. I love front row.
Hi, I'm Patricia from the Netherlands. I was wondering, how do you media manage if you shoot in 4K with your iPhone or with your phone?
Who wants to take that? You shoot in 4K.
So I have, if I have a lot of filming to do, I've got a large capacity phone, but I've got a 15 Pro Max. So that now enables me to film directly to an SD power bank. So I can film in real time and put it directly onto a 4 terabyte drive, external drive, which is very handy. Then I can unplug that and plug it directly into, here it is here, into my iPad, so it's quite seamless.
So it transfers straight to the drive, or you have your drive on your iPhone?
I can, from my Blackmagic camera app, direct it to, rather than record inside the app or into the phone, into the photos, tell it to put everything directly onto this drive. And it's super fast, no lag. I film 4K, ProRes, Apple Log. So, and it's a very high bit rate. So they're big files, and it's very efficient.
Awesome, thanks.
My answer is I don't, unless I absolutely need to, because my workflow is all about speed. I'm shooting and editing on the phone and filing pretty much the same day. So the answer is depends on your workflow. Yeah.
And I would say the same. So I'm looking forward to when I go back up to the Arctic in September. I'll be doing the same thing because before we would shoot and then do a whole data dump at the end of the day, obviously, and onto external drives as well. So that just ate up a lot of time, but that was what we had to do at the time. But next time I'm going to be doing that.
And there's no AI. There is nothing that's going to replace the discipline of logging and capturing your footage, day of, backing up, being disciplined, organizing them, keeping those. I do not have books on my libraries at home. I have hard drives over the last 20 years of all my projects. That's what you collect. There doesn't seem to be a solution. If there is, please enlighten us. Any other questions? Thank you guys so much.
Oh, wait,
it's been
no,
great. Oh, there's a question here. Okay. We're going to wait for the microphone, please, because it won't be heard over the airwaves.
Thank you. A technical question for you for filming in very cold conditions. I film in Ukraine, and in winter the phone fails. It just switches off. Is there any magic solution or any kind of sleeve or?
No, I know. I wish there was. What honestly, keeping the phone close to your body is in an internal pocket. The batteries like that. It's because it's just like extreme heat, extreme heat, extreme cold, the phone will die. So it is a challenge, But if you're disciplined, if you have a vehicle close by that you can constantly be plugging in, keep things warm, you have to manage it. I know it's imperfect, but
I would also add that on the other end of that, they can overheat. So
Yeah.
in extreme conditions of heat, they can also shut down. So you've got to be mindful of
Yeah,
that. And
that's
when
what
I
we
was in
experienced
Africa,
in the desert just a few
Yep.
weeks ago.
yeah. So
I mean, but if you compare with a DSLR or another video camera, then you also have like fog issues, right? So there's always going to be an issue depending whatever your technology you're using. I just find the ability to get intimate with people is really so great with the phone.
And just a reminder that this work is best presented on a 90-foot LED wall. And if you happen to have one, invite us and we'll come and show our films because they absolutely hold up. Okay, thank you all.